Hello, DickHeads! Like a pink laser beam of truth beaming from San Diego, California, straight to your brain hole. I am with your personal precogs. Myself, David Agranoff, and...
Murder! Me, Anthony Trevino.
And Langhorn J. Tweed.
Hello, everyone.
Also known forever and moving forward as
Langhang.
Langhang.
All right. We're going to talk today about Minority Report, but before we do that, a little housekeeping. The next episode, the main episode of DickHeads is going to be The World Jones Made. This is our next in our reading series.
And not The Man Who Japed. We had a long conversation about it, and it's The World Jones Made.
Yes, The World Jones Made is the second Philip K. Dick book, as said by Philip K. Dick. So,
fuck that guy.
Yeah, he called it his second book, so it is his second book. So, when you next hear us, we'll be talking about The World Jones Made, but you have a little bit of time left to read the book, get it from your library, buy it from Amazon, or if you want to listen to the audiobook, it is on YouTube. We have posted links to all of it on our Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us all there, and you can get more details. But The World Jones Made is our next one, and we're excited to get back into a full-length novel. In the meantime, we're going to talk about Minority Report.
Well, first we're going to talk about the story, and then we'll get into the movie.
Yeah, but we're going to start with the story. And this was a short story that was originally published in 1956. In, what was the name of the magazine? It says in the back of the book. It was written in 1954, before the Solar Lottery.
Yeah, so the Minority Report was published in Fantastic Universe of January 1956.
Yeah, and so there were a lot more pulp magazines back then. So,
but I believe it was written December 22nd of 1954.
Yeah. Right before Christmas. Yeah, there were a ton of different pulp magazines, so PKD was spread out all over the place.
So does that mean at some point Shane Black should do the Minority Report, but set it during Christmas time?
That's an interesting concept. We'll talk about how we can fix the movie maybe at the end. But yes, there were pulp magazines out the wazoo, and PKD was publishing all over the place, which gave him an opportunity to flesh out all kinds of ideas. And so lots of stories like Minority Report, like Paycheck, that later became movies.
The Adjustment Bureau, Total Recall.
Yeah, these were all short stories that were published throughout. And during the early 50s, especially before he really started getting rolling on the novels, he published a ton of short stories. And so we're probably not going to do a lot of short story episodes unless they were adapted into either movies or episodes of Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams.
But what we will be doing later on when we get to it is when we do the episode on the Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, we will also be talking about The Days of Perky Pat.
Which is a short story that originally inspired that book. On that note, why don't we talk about the story? Anthony, you read it most recently. We've all three read the story recently, but Anthony just reread it again today.
Well, I reread like a quarter of it. So the short story, The Minority Report, is about John Anderton, who is one of the founders. I think he is the founder of the pre-crime division. And basically what pre-crime is three precogs essentially foretell the future of who's going to commit a crime. And the story centers around the fact that the John Anderton getting one of the slips with the name of a murderer and the victim on it, and it's pointing the finger at him.
Okay, we're going to assume most people have seen the movie at this point. However, the difference is, but in this story, the precogs are kind of like mutants.
Man, we will get to it when I get to the part where I complain about how much I hate the precogs in the movie.
Okay, well, we will get to that. Now, the prediction, the crimes are predicted on basically a punch card, and they have the name of the murderer and the victim and the murderer, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, for those who don't know, a long time ago they used to use punch cards as their way of programming computers. You would have different holes that signified different things in the computer language in
Holy
binary.
fuck! I find HTML tedious and coding tedious. That sounds even worse.
It was way worse because you would have huge stacks of these punch cards that would represent very little information.
So keep in mind, this story was written in December 1954. This was state-of-the-art shit right here with the punch cards. And really, if you think about it, there wasn't even TVs. Like, there were TVs in homes, but it wasn't as ubiquitous in every living room at that point. You know, it was probably more of a upper-class thing to even have TVs. So the fact that this story was written at a time when, you know, Eisenhower was still president and everything, it just really, you know, it's something to keep in mind when you think about the story being updated, even, 19 years ago when they made the movie. This story was just, you know, really ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go on with the story.
Well, I don't think the audience wants to hear us just go beat by beat through the story.
No, you don't.
Well, just tell us what happens.
So basically, Anderton tries to flee. Because he knows it's a matter of time before they get to him, and he ends up getting picked up by this group of people who take him to.
He's accused. He's accused of a
get
murder.
They get it.
Okay, yeah.
So he's essentially kidnapped by this group who take him to the man he's supposed to murder. You know, they have some politico conversations about the nature of the system, the pre-crime system. And then afterwards, when he's being escorted back to his home, they're sideswiped by a bread truck. And in true PKD
Very specifically a bread truck.
Man, it's a bread truck. Every time I read it, I kept just seeing Wonder Bread on the side, although it probably wasn't around then.
No, Wonder Bread was around then.
And then this group is basically they explain to him that it's a what is it? What would you call it, Larry? It's not a coup.
It sort of is a coup in a way, isn't it?
It's a setup against him, perpetrated by his wife and the guy who's supposed to be training under him, Edward Whitwer.
All right, we got a Whitwer in there.
Yeah, I did it right.
Whitmer.
I did it right. And so what kind of progresses is Anderton's paranoia of trying to escape and clear his name, but really what we find out later, Larry, is
that the whole thing is a conspiracy by the military to regain control of the world or the society that they live in, because the pre-crime division is currently more in control and the military has lost its...
It's more in law enforcement's control.
Yeah, they want to return to a sort of martial law system, whereas pre-crime has allowed for a sort of what would you call it? Would you call it a good society, or at least a not a utopian society, but a version of a utopian society?
It's a perceived utopia. I would say that to accuse someone of a crime that they haven't committed, kind of, I don't know what the legality of that would really be.
Well,
how can you convict someone of something they've never done?
It's a fascist utopia.
There you go.
And I just want to point out that Wonder Bread was founded in 1921.
Oh, so it totally could have been a Wonder Bread truck.
Yep. And not only that, but Wonder Bread was founded in my home state of Indiana.
Sweet.
Which I did not know.
Sweet.
So there you go, listeners.
No wonder you're so... I'm going to call you Wonder Bread from now on.
So then the story continues where Anderton, in order to clear his name, finds out that it's going to be impossible to clear his name, and the only way to keep pre-crime alive is to commit the murder that he's been accused of committing, which is to kill this military leader in plain open sight and make sure that pre-crime continues.
Right.
He's a martyr to his own cause.
Yeah, he's
right, and he is because the whole basically what is the Minority Report, David?
Well, the Minority Report is a concept that that existed in the legal system already at that time, and
this is in real life.
In real life, yes, the Minority Report is
IRL, as the kids say these days.
So if you have a hung jury, and the jury was locked at, let's say, 8 guilty, 3 innocent, then the 3 who had the innocent vote would be considered the minority vote, and they would always, when a trial failed, they would do a minority report to try and figure out why those 3 voted in order to possibly go back and have another trial and convict or whatever. Or basically to just study why those 3 people did not vote to convict. Prosecutors were really into this. So
this is in the rare 11-person juries that you might not see very often.
Well, right. I just picked a number. I'm sorry.
That rare 2-person jury, which wouldn't even work for that.
Okay, so in the pre-crime system, in the story Minority Report, you have 3 precogs. So it takes 3 of them to have a vision of what's going to happen and for the card to be punched out. So the concept is that there's always a little bit of doubt in the precogs, and that one of the 3 sometimes does not report the same, and then for that reason, that's the concept of the Minority Report in this story. And so
it's that the future is not set in stone.
Right.
There's always a possibility that the person that committed this pre-crime will have not committed that pre-crime.
So in a way that I think it's overlooked a lot of times is that the title Minority Report has multiple meanings, and what PKD was doing was actually an analogy for the possibility of the future changing is the Minority Report in a sense. And I didn't even get that the first time I read the story. And, in my head, I kept thinking about the movie with where's my Minority Report?
Right.
Where's the Minority Report, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But in the concept of the story, I think what PKD was trying to do was, with this concept of pre-crime and psychic crime prediction, which, is a theme that comes up in a lot of his stories. And you have, for example, in Solar Lottery, which we did last month, that had the precog assassins, right? So in this concept, he's really kind of exploring the idea of doubt in the justice system in a really cool way. So yeah, it's a cool story. For 1954, it's really ahead of its time. It's a lot of Philip K. Dick short stories from that time get poo-pooed off as being pulp action stories that are not as sophisticated as the stuff that came later, but in a lot of ways the story is quite sophisticated.
Yeah, it to me is more of a low-key thriller than an action film.
Yeah.
Or an action story, excuse me.
Yeah. And certainly you can see that there is potential to make an action story out of it and to do interesting
There's
things.
potential to do it. That's all the movie is.
I know, and the movie succeeds to varying degrees for me more than it does for you guys, but we all agree I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
But I think the concept of the short story is much more intelligent than is given credit a lot of times, because it's seen as just one of these pulpy PKD throwaway short stories, and it's not. It's very nuanced and a very well thought out short story. So I personally thought, and it's longer than I expected. I expected maybe a 10-pager.
How long is it, Anthony?
It's
about 30 pages or so.
Yeah, it's about 30 pages. So it's almost, it's not quite novella length, but it's a good.
It's just a long short story.
It's a very long short story. And which is, when I was growing up, one of my favorite authors was Clive Barker, and he wrote very long short stories.
Oh yeah, totally.
Where you're just pushing the boundaries, and I think this PKD story did. And there's a lot of shorter PKD short stories that are out there, but
I think the length gives this story a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah.
Than had it been 10 pages or so. I mean, what would have been the story? Anderton gets a punch card. He goes, "Oh shit, it's me." And then what? You cut out 20 pages of him trying to figure it out and just go straight to him saying, well, we got the Minority Report. Let's see what that says.
Well, yeah, they would have to eliminate the military aspect. You would have had to eliminate the military aspect because that's what takes up the bulk of the story, is the idea that the military wants to control all of us.
So question, guys.
Theme-wise.
Now, after reading this, do you think this could have been a PKD novel? Would it have been better served to be a novel? Because I think it should have been a novel.
I think it would have been a great novel. The one thing that I found lacking in the story was character development, which is often said about Philip K. Dick's stories, the short stories.
The short stories, yeah. I definitely think using some of the things that the movie actually changed in the story could have made it an actual novel. I think, for one thing, setting up and showing how pre-crime worked, and maybe seeing Anderton work another case before, just starting with his card being delivered.
Right. Well, I think it also would have given us the opportunity to see... To get more time with Leopold Kaplan, because what I like about the short story is that it pits two people against each other, one who's supposed to be the supposed murderer and the other one who is the victim. And I think had this been a novel, we would have been able to kind of explore the thought process of, I know that someone's supposed to kill me, how can I thwart it? Right. And in a novel, you could have also done a lot more looking into the society and the culture and how a post-crime New York City, because it takes place in New York City, right? Correct.
Like a post-crime New York City functions, because it
in that fascist utopia.
Yeah, and was it national in the short story? I don't remember. Like, I know that's a big part of the plot of the movie is pre-crime going national, but
I do not recall.
I don't think they say anything about it in the story. Plus, we would have gotten a lot more Wackadoo Science.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, if it had been a novel, we would have had more Wackadoo Science.
But there's some serious... Hold on. You guys converse amongst yourselves for a minute.
Had it been a novel, there definitely would have been a scene where they end up going off to the colonies at the end.
They practically do anyway.
Yeah, and that is one big difference between the short story and the movie, is that there are mentions of an Alpha Centauri colony and some more like...
Yes, well, not just a mention. They actually, at the end, Anderton and his wife go to one of those colonies.
Yeah.
Or at least are heading there.
Yeah, and then there's really a concept of in the short story of, like, hey, give yourself up for this crime, and if you go to this work camp, you might even enjoy it and like it, which is like a totally different mentality than the movie had.
The movie does something that is much better in that sense.
Yeah,
that raises the stakes. But we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Minority Report is a really outstanding short story, but it definitely has a few flaws and has some things that it definitely could have been better. This was early PKD. This was very early. He was on the verge of publishing his first novel, but he hadn't quite published his first novel.
So when was the first story he ever wrote? When did that happen?
The first one that he ever sold?
No, that he ever wrote.
Well, he wrote stories as far back as high school, as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here, I got you some Wackadoo Science.
Right on.
In the gloomy half-darkness, the three idiots sat babbling. Every incoherent utterance, every random syllable was analyzed, compared, reassembled in the form of visual symbols, transcribed on conventional punch cards, and ejected into various coded slots. Right. Come on, y'all.
So the precogs are just sitting there like...
mumbling to themselves.
Yeah, they're going like basketball, feet...
Basketball,
chair,
feet,
cardboard.
Larry Barbecue, naked, Ballast Point, whatever.
And then somebody
Rainbow
puts them
eggplant.
together and then is like, oh, so-and-so is going to get murdered on Tuesday at 9:00.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
They're basically mumblecore vegetables that spit out this information that we then through some Rube Goldberg machine decode.
Yes.
Wow.
Which they definitely have in the movie.
Yeah, they definitely a little bit of that. I don't know. I mean, there's some things I think that we'll get once we get to the movie. We'll talk about the differences.
Yeah, we'll argue about it.
But yeah. So is there anything else really in the short story that you guys want to talk about as far as without comparing it to the movie on its own?
Larry?
No, I don't think so. I think we're ready. I think we're almost there.
I enjoyed it, but it has all of the kind of trappings of a Philip K. Dick story that I find kind of, I wouldn't say annoying, but they're what I would call stereotypical Dick tropes.
Yeah.
You know? And other than that, I think the point of the story is less about the characters and more about the idea of the Minority Report in living in a world where pre-crime is a reality.
Right.
Well, that's the great thing about short stories is you don't have to fulfill all aspects of a novel. You can concentrate.
Whoa, David, when did you sound like Larry?
You can concentrate on one aspect of a story, or just an idea, or just a character.
Right. And that is, the strength of the short story, especially from the PKD standpoint. And I really do wish he expanded this idea because it is a really great idea. I think one of the reasons why you see certain short stories get made into movies is because they are really cool concepts that can be blown out.
Right.
And should have been novels. Some more than others work better as movies. I still can't understand that they're going to turn Second Variety into a whole TV show. That is a little...
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
That'll be a little much, maybe. But I mean, even if you just look down the line at Adjustment Bureau, Paycheck, some of these ones that all got turned into movies, whether the movies were good or not, they were ideas that could have been novels.
Well, and remember, this one did get turned into a TV show.
Yeah, that's true.
Very, very bad TV show.
Boo.
Well, it was a sequel to the movie. It really didn't have much to do with the short story, to be honest.
Well, so yeah, now we're at the movie because the movie itself is what happens when you take a really good idea and then you just ruin it.
Ruin is a strong word to me, and
ruined.
You will, listeners, just soon discover that between the three, I am the Minority Report of this precog circle, because I thought the movie was flawed but okay. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about the journey this short story made from Philip K. Dick's typewriter to Hollywood.
I'm already bored.
Okay, well,
go play your fucking Fruit Ninja or something.
No,
I'm
just gonna get. It's not Fruit Ninja, Larry.
All right, so
Candy Crush Saga.
So, in the 90s, there was a very popular Philip K. Dick movie made called Total Recall, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in the wake of that, the producers wanted to do another Philip K. Dick story as a sequel to Total Recall, and they bought the rights to Minority Report. And the idea was going to be that they were going to take the same story of Minority Report and use Quaid, the character from Total Recall, and put him in the Anderton role and set Minority Report on Mars, but have like a whole pre-crime thing.
Oh, so. One can dream, David.
Yeah.
One can dream.
I would have liked that story.
Well, I don't like the use of Minority Report being shoved into that. I just would like to have seen a Total Recall sequel.
Well, I would agree with that, but if we're going to do Minority Report, I think that would be better than the hot pile of shit I got.
See, I actually like this. I don't know. I'm fine with this movie, but we'll get to that. But, I mean, if you had Schwarzenegger there, you would have been, come on, where's my Minority Report?
Oh, yeah, and it would have been amazing.
Give it to me now. Yeah. And, got to get to Mars and all that. And they were going to do that. They hired a screenwriter named John Cohen. And as far as we can tell, this is his only screenwriting credit, is he did 2 drafts. He did one Total Recall sequel version of the script. Then they eventually decided that was not the way they wanted to go, but they still wanted to do Minority Report. And so for a while, the director connected to it was Jean Debont, who is the director of Speed, the action movie Speed. I don't know that I don't know what else he's directed besides Speed.
Yeah,
Stand by. That's why we have this little pocket computer called a cell phone.
Yeah, the interwebs.
So while they're doing that, for a while, they were trying to work out this version with him directing with the John Cohen script.
What was his name?
Jean Dubont.
I'll just look up
Jan DeBont.
Jan Dubont. They were going to do this version. It didn't happen. But then Spielberg and Tom Cruise, who had been wanting to work together forever, kind of came together. I believe it was Tom Cruise's production company he had been circling the Jan Dubont version and had been considered.
So DeBont has directed Speed,
Yes.
Twister,
Oh, God.
Speed 2 Cruise Control,
Wow.
1999's remake of The Haunting, which I fucking hated,
Right?
and Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life, which no one cares about. Those early Tomb Raider movies, they suck.
So he directed Speed.
No, Twister!
Twister. Well, yeah, he did. Bill Paxton was in that.
Damn right.
Yeah, okay.
Show
Yeah, the
some
movie still
respect.
sucks.
Now I bet you think Dante's Peak sucks too.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so Jan DeBont left the project, but Tom Cruise's production company had apparently acquired the rights. He took it to Spielberg, and for a long time, they were going to do this right after Mission Impossible 2, and they had the movie set up with the John Cohen script. It was going to be Tom Cruise and Kate Blanchett was going to play the precog Agatha. Matt Damon was going to play Whitwer.
Matt Damon.
Ian McKellen was going to play the role that Max von Sydow eventually played, Burgess. Jenna Elfman was going to play Laura Anderton, and Javier Bardem was at some point was in the works for possibly playing Whitwer before Matt Damon took the role. So they got really close to doing it, but thanks to John Woo and the reshoots for Mission Impossible 2, they couldn't do it in time for Spielberg went off and did AI instead. And then they circled back to Minority Report, and that gave them a chance to hire Scott Frank to do
A fantastic screenwriter.
Yeah, Scott Frank, the screenwriter, and at the time he was mostly known for doing Elmore Leonard movies. Out of Sight and Get Shorty were his most popular films. He had done those with, I know Out of Sight with Steven Soderbergh, just absolutely fantastic script.
Well, he also did Dead Again and Little Man Tate.
At the time.
He had a wide range of movies that he had written.
Yeah, and for those of you now who might be interested in Scott Frank's work, he went on to direct a movie called The Lookout that Anthony's a big fan of. I haven't seen it yet.
It's an awesome movie.
Yeah, and he directed Walk Among the Tombstones with Liam Neeson, which is a pretty good serial killer movie. And he recently wrote and directed the entire series Godless on Netflix, which is a great Western series.
He also wrote Logan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, wrote Logan. So Scott Frank was a good hire by Steven Spielberg. However, maybe not the best hire for this project because, I mean, he admitted in interviews that he wasn't a science fiction fan.
Which that's a huge problem. As a science fiction fan,
Yeah.
I want all of the people that write science fiction to at least like science fiction.
Right. And I mention this because we're all fans of his work. We all like things that Scott Frank has done, but this is not his finest moment as a screenwriter.
It certainly is. I would say of everything I've seen, or it certainly isn't. I think of everything of his I've seen, this is my least favorite.
Yeah. And we, talking about this movie earlier, like we talked about who was a better screenwriter for this project. And we all agreed that another screenwriter that Spielberg worked with often at the time was David Koepp, who wrote War of the Worlds for Spielberg. He also wrote Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but
But we won't talk about that.
But David Koepp also wrote and directed Stir of Echoes and wrote Panic Room. The first Spider-Man movie, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, was David Koepp's script. So David Koepp, I think, would have been a better hire. He was more reverent of source material. And you look at, he updated Stir of Echoes from the novel written in the 50s and did a great job of
Yeah,
modernizing it.
that movie is brilliant.
Yeah, Stir of Echoes is way underrated. so I think we all agree that David Koepp might have been a better hire
Yes.
for this project.
Yes.
But anyways, so after AI, so Spielberg was coming straight off of AI to do this, and Tom Cruise literally walked off the set of Vanilla Sky with Cameron Crowe, and a week later was filming Minority Report. But one other interesting thing about the production, and then I'll shut up about the production, is that 5 years before they actually ended up making the movie, Tom Cruise and Spielberg put together a team of futurists at a hotel in Santa Monica, and they had like a weekend-long conference talking about the technology that they wanted to see in the story. And so they put a lot of...
Who were these futurists?
I
You're
don't...
really gonna name all of them?
Well, I'd like to just know, was it like Dr. Seuss and...
No,
What?
they were serious futurists. I mean...
No, they weren't. What the hell is bind foam or a
Six stick. It's ridiculous.
Yes, but some of the technology, like the way that...
Jetpacks.
Well, Spielberg admitted that jetpacks were completely unrealistic, that he just wanted to do those. I actually did see a quote that Spielberg just said, I just wanted to do jetpacks, because it reminded him of 50s sci-fi that he grew up on.
And it looks pulpy and goofy as shit when they fly down on their jetpacks in an alley.
Right. But some of the technology is pretty realistic for what could be coming with, like, the eye scans that, like, with the targeted ads and the way the self-guided car. So with the self-guided cars and the targeted ads and those kinds of things, I think are technologies that they really tried to, like, predict something that was coming. And believe me, I have a futurist podcast I listen to called Team Human, and they were just talking about, in the episode that I just listened to, about how futurists can get really silly with themselves. And there's a whole concept of smart cities and how, like, these futurists almost, like, overthink these cities. And so I certainly think that some of the technology in this is a little overthought.
Overthought.
Maybe a
Okay.
little bit. But
It just seems it seems mostly juvenile rather than overthought.
right. Well, and I think to a degree Spielberg was, at certain times, some of the technology was servicing the idea that this is based off of a 50s pulp sci-fi story. And I think sometimes things like the jetpacks work a little better than other things. But,
Can I do my list now? Can I do my list of...
Advertisers?
yeah, so one problem that Larry had with this movie is...
Well, there's so many advertisements in this movie. It's ridiculous. For a rich, super rich filmmaker who can make any movie he wants to, Spielberg loves to put real live ads in his movie. If you watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is a fantastic movie, there is a full 30-second Budweiser commercial in that movie.
Well, he didn't have the power back then.
For no reason.
Well, no reason other than Budweiser probably kicked them a nice chunk of change for the movie.
Sure, we could guess at that.
But even this movie has so many ads in it. The IMDb trivia is, look at all the ads that are in this movie.
Yeah.
So these are just some of the ones that I saw. There's they watch Cops at one point. There's Lexus, Nokia, Guinness, Aquafina, Gap, The Gap, Ben & Jerry's, Lego, Burger King, Pepsi, Reebok,
Did you go back and rewatch this just to find the ads?
and the
You
You
did.
might have.
And whatever
didn't he?
that watch is,
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria.
I don't know. That was terrible.
So that's
I went back and watched it again for those.
that is a
didn't you?
lot of ads, and that's just about that might be 3/4 of the ads in there.
I admit that I went and bought a bottle of Aquafina after we watched the movie.
You had to.
I had to.
The movie
felt
told you to.
compelled.
I didn't.
Okay, so yeah, the ads are a thing, but in fairness, I just want to point out that Spielberg and Cruise did not take a salary on this movie that in order to keep and to put that money towards the budget.
That is disingenuous.
Good
That is
for
totally
them.
disingenuous. They got points on the movie.
Well, sure, they
They
got
got paid way more than taking a salary.
I don't even care if they didn't take his salary. They both had enough money to where you can make that decision. So, good job, I guess. You want a fucking cookie for that? Like,
No, I know. It's like Tom Brady negotiating his contract into bonuses so he can get a new O lineman. I understand this. And I understand that Tom Brady is married to one of the richest women in the world, too, so he can take less money. But, I'm sorry, we're talking sports for a second there. But
oh, it's all right. I'll just ignore it like I always do.
all right, so I understand that Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg not taking a salary is like boo-hoo. It's not a big deal, but
It's not boo-hoo. They still got rich off the movie.
maybe not this movie. But
They did.
well, it wasn't my most ginormous blockbuster, was it? I mean, not that I'm aware. I guess we could look up how much it made, but
I'm sure it's not $25.
no. But I know that they were struggling to get to the budget they needed at one point, and so that they had originally agreed to a salary, and then
Struggling, huh?
to get to the budget that they wanted, that they needed for the film, to make it look as awesome as it did.
No. It's awful. It's the most confused cinematography I've seen in a movie in a long time.
Yeah, that's Spielberg taking risks, right? So, Larry, how much did it end up making?
U.S. gross was $132 million. Worldwide gross was $358 million.
So, 358 million worldwide?
Yep.
It made its money back and made a profit. Okay, so yeah, they did make quite a bit of money off this.
Yeah, of course they did. It's a Steven Spielberg, Tom Cruise vehicle.
All right, so we didn't actually talk about the story, but I'm guessing that most people have like either seen the movie in the past or watched it again before listening to this. And I know,
And if you listened to it before, if you watched it before listening to this, I'm sorry. It's a really long, shitty movie.
But let's start with the good. Let's start with at least some of the good things they did.
okay,
Or at least some of the good things they tried to do.
All right, which were what? Larry?
Okay, well, for one, as David said a little bit ago, they were trying to make a modern noir film. And while they failed at that through many different techniques, and we'll talk about how they actually shot the movie, which is one of the biggest failures in my opinion, they were trying to do different things and create something that no one has seen before. And I
they
appreciate
succeeded
that.
in seeing something I haven't seen before, I guess.
Not in a good way, though.
Not in a good way. Oh, shit.
by the way, somebody outside your house is jamming John Cougar Mellencamp right now. Just
So I guess that's
Another
going to be
Indiana.
the music we open this episode with.
Yeah, right.
hurts so good. Okay,
But
they've driven on. Sorry,
They also tried to.
Peeling
They
back
did.
the curtain.
They did take some things that were in the story and make them better, like the consequences for committing a pre-crime.
much better. Yeah, that it is a better writing choice. So the consequences in the movie are that if you are accused of a pre-crime, you are put into suspended animation in this like really creepy, like kind of mausoleum that's like with these tubes, and they put you in there, and Blake Nelson from Oh Brother Where Art Thou plays organ music throughout your entire life, and you have these reoccurring dreams while you sleep away your sentence.
Right, which is much worse than just being in a detention center with a bunch of other people who never committed a crime.
And you might kind of like it, is said
As
in
they
the
say in
short
the story.
Yeah, in the short story they say you might kind of like being in the detention center.
And there are some scenes they got right in this movie.
Yeah.
The Terry Gilliam-esque eyeball scene.
Yeah, so when and a lot of the best scenes in the movie come from, so they track you by your eyeballs, and that's how so when Anderton knows that he has to break back into pre-crime, he has to switch out his eyeballs. And probably the best scene in the movie, in my opinion, the scene that really, really works, is when he goes to a surgeon to get his eyeballs exchanged,
Played by who, Anthony?
Peter Stormare,
Yeah.
my champion character actor.
We'll talk about the character actors here in a little bit, but we'll come back to Peter Stormare. But this scene...
We better.
The scene where he goes to the surgeon and the pre-crime cops catch up to Anderton and they use spider drones to track him through the building in a very David Fincher-esque, let's face it.
Panic Room.
Yeah, this really ripped off... This had to be after Panic Room, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and basically Spielberg
I think.
I'll look.
used the style from Panic Room to... Basically, there were no ceilings, and it was cut away, and the scene with the spider drones was fucking awesome. And I personally think that scene, anyways, was
2002, so same year.
Same year.
Huh. Well, they're probably friends. They may have been talking.
Huh? Right.
Yeah, I wonder which one came first. Which Panic Room, written by David Koepp. That whole spider drone scene to me was fantastic. And for me, even though the movie was really long and kind of arduous to sit through this last time, the spider drone scene for me was like, I remember my experience seeing it in the theater. The first thing I remembered after the movie was over was, fuck yeah, that spider drone scene was really cool.
Panic Room came out first, March of 2002. Then Minority Report was June of 2002.
So you can't say that he necessarily ripped off Fincher, or that they made
No.
Yeah, so they
Well,
were...
Fincher did it better anyway, so.
Yeah,
Fincher typically does most things better.
yeah. Fincher, yeah, if you haven't seen Panic Room, we all three precogs here agree.
It's worth watching.
Yeah, so if you were considering watching Minority Report, we're suggesting you not do that.
Yeah.
Just listen to this. We'll fill you in and go watch Panic Room. So, yeah, that's one of the things that was really good, was the spider drone scene. And I think
What's his face as Whitwer
Was a great casting
we all
choice.
liked Colin Farrell, who replaced Matt Damon from the original production in the role of Whitwer, who is basically Anderton's antagonist and kind of a red herring in this.
Red Snapper.
Yeah. You have to have watched A Perfect Getaway to get that reference, but the red herring in the
Starring Billy Bob Thornton?
No, Perfect.
Oh, what am I thinking of?
Perfect Getaway is the David Toohey movie with what's his name from Justified.
I'm thinking of A Simple Plan, huh?
It's got Steven Zahn and Timothy Oliphant.
Oh.
Timothy. Oh, it's a great movie. Really good, underrated.
Yeah, underrated
Wait,
movie.
is that the like torture porn movie?
No.
No, I'm thinking of Teresa's. You know what, guys? I'm gonna show myself out.
Anyways, Perfect Getaway is not what this is about.
But we are talking about red snappers.
Yeah, so the red herring in it is that, you're meant to think that Colin Farrell is going to be the big villain of the piece. And of course...
Yeah, but a quarter of the way into this movie, he's not.
And why is that, Larry?
Because he shows no sign of being involved in the conspiracy whatsoever.
No, but they set up the kind of the tension between Anderton and Whitwer like almost right away. So he does have a bad guy lean to him, but that's not the biggest reason that you kind of figure out that he's not.
I think it might be something about introducing a villainous actor.
Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, that was the bait I was throwing at you that you did not.
That you just swam around.
Yeah. Just look at what's that bait doing on that hook there for?
Right.
So why, Larry, did you not ever believe that Whitwer was actually
okay?
the antagonist?
So Max von Sydow comes onto the scene and basically says, "Hey, look at me! I won't be around much, so I'm definitely not the villain."
See you in the third act, audience.
Yeah, exactly. It was so telegraphed that Max von Sydow was going to be the villain from the guy that was the villain in every 80s and 70s movie that was ever made.
Which is weird to me because he's still the hero of The Exorcist, but whatever, That's the one.
From The Exorcist, he went on to be the villain in 3 Days of the Condor, Conan, Strange Brew, Ghostbusters 2, Never Say Never Again.
It was Conan the Destroyer, right?
I think
he
so.
wasn't in The Barbarian. That was James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, he played a lot of villains.
He was Ming the Merciless.
Right.
And Vigo.
He was really great in Flash Gordon. But anyways, Max von Sydow was, pretty
But
obvious.
you don't introduce
Von Sydow, not Max von Sydow. That makes him sound like a fashion designer.
You don't introduce a 6'4" well-known actor like Max von Sydow
What does
in the
his
first
height have
act
to do with anything? I don't
He's an intimidating person. That's what I'm saying. He towers over everyone else in the movie.
Yeah, but see, at the same time, like older actors like that from foreign countries, they generally play wizards, right? So he could have been a wizard. He could have just
Well, he was basically the sci-fi version of a wizard, wasn't he?
right. Now, if Ian McKellen had been cast in the role, would you have felt the same way?
I wouldn't. At that time, I wouldn't have known enough about Ian McKellen as an actor.
You wouldn't have thought, oh, he's definitely the villain.
No.
Okay.
I mean, it definitely wouldn't have been telegraphed as much.
So
He could have been the kindly... I just don't ever see Max von Sydow as the kindly father figure.
right.
No, he's like that father figure that says, "Go stand out in the cold and learn to be a man."
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So you know what we kind of skipped over is we didn't really talk about the story,
The actual plot of
the actual
movie.
plot and the story. So one last thing about the general movie before we get into like the differences between the stories, just about the sheer number of character actors that Spielberg is able to pull in. If you have a director like Spielberg or Scorsese, a lot of times they can get some pretty well-known that guy or that gal actors, and by that I mean actors that when you see them on screen, you're like, oh yeah, that guy or that gal, but you don't know their name.
Right.
And he's got a lot of those in this movie from, but most importantly, we had Frank Grillo, who was like pre-crime.
So we're going to give all the names of the...
And you're not going to know who they are. But if you saw their faces, you'd know.
Right.
You'd know, well...
You know, that guy, Frank Grillo.
Or that...
He was in those very popular Purge movies.
Or that guy who was the really bad villain in Justified on FX, but I don't know his name.
Also, most recently in Game Over, Man.
Yeah,
You're talking about Neil McDonough?
Neil McDonough. But before we looked up his name the other day watching the movie, I had no idea what his name was.
You guys, I think we got ahead of ourselves. We never told them what this movie's about.
We're not ahead of ourselves.
We're going to get to that.
They've seen the movie. They know what it's about.
All right, y'all.
We're going to talk about the differences here in a bit.
Yeah, we're not going to explain what the movie's about. We're just going to talk about the differences.
Two of my favorite...
Okay, boss.
Two of my
Don't make me
favorite...
smack you again.
Two of my favorite little actors in this, Clea Scott, who was Frank Black's partner in the third season of Millennium, has 2 lines, but to me that was kind of cool. And then, but Peter Stormare as the surgeon, we all agree Peter Stormare is, if you don't know him, he is one of the best character actors. Look him up right away. As soon as you see him, you will go, oh yeah, that guy who always plays villains. He played Satan in Constantine. He was in Arnold Schwarzenegger's Last Stand. That he was so great in that.
He was really good, really over the top in that movie.
Yeah, but for me, the Peter Stormare role that always jumps to my mind is Dino Velvet in 8mm.
Right.
And where he plays like a guy who makes snuff films, and he's really fucking great in that movie.
And I personally think he is great in the video game Before Dawn.
Yeah,
where he plays a psychiatrist.
So we mentioned all these that guy actors.
Wait. Let's hear what Anthony. Anthony, when is Stormare his best for you?
Like his best role?
Yeah.
Probably as Satan in that terrible Constantine movie.
Which has the greatest supporting cast of all time.
Oh yeah, all the supporting cast in that movie is awesome, but I think that's my favorite role of his, followed closely by his role in Fargo.
Ah,
Yes. Yeah.
He's great in that. He's great in John Wick 2, the brief cameo he has in that.
right.
You get Peter Stormare is the type of actor you love to see because he's like your weird, funny uncle.
Yeah.
But we're not just geeking out on all the other things Peter Stormare did. He, in his brief screen time in this movie, in Minority Report, he is great.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. He's at full bananas.
Yeah, he's full bananas. And if you look up on IMDb's trivia, like he improvised lines in Swedish because he's Swedish. So his character is obviously Swedish, and he says some like crazy things like in Swedish in the movie. He really sells being bananas in this movie. And in short screen time, he elevates the movie just a little bit and has a performance that's like really worth it, and just is really great. So we all love Peter Stormare in this, and it's kind of funny how much we love Peter Stormare in this.
Well,
But,
because he's a guy we all grew up with movies, right, that he's been in. So we all
Yeah.
have kind of a fondness for him.
Big Lebowski.
Yeah, he's in The Big Lebowski.
Yeah, he was great in that.
He's
he was
in-
one of
he's-
the
he's-
nihilists.
He's
in the Big
Dino
Lebowski,
Velvet in 8mm.
which
Right.
I already mentioned. If you weren't texting on your phone
He
when I was
says-
talking.
I was answering an important question, David,
Okay.
Sure.
about the podcast I'm cheating on you guys with.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
he's
I know you were fruit ninjaing.
he was in Lockout. He was great
Lockout.
in Lockout.
He's in American Gods. He's in.
All right.
oh my
right.
God, he's in Bruiser.
He's in a ton of stuff.
He's been in a ton
But
of
he
stuff.
he also represents one of the biggest problems in this movie,
How so?
which is at times, while it is attempting to be a futuristic noir film, sometimes those characters that you find in noir films, those wacky characters, are a little bit too wacky in this. It almost seems like it's a satire of noir.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think that's more. I don't think that's totally at play with his scene.
Yeah, I'm talking about the whole movie now.
Right, but you said that it was representative of one of the movie's flaws, is
Yes.
his scene. I don't understand the correlation.
They
'cause
totally over the top. Anthony,
Yes.
you were just being difficult.
No, I'm asking you to explain yourself. You made a
Okay.
statement. I want you to explain it.
So
I disagree with you too, Larry, but go ahead.
No, I didn't say I disagreed.
I say he's representative because there's a lot of other scenes where there are similar over-the-top performances that don't work because they aren't Peter Stormare, or the actors aren't as well versed in that type of role as Peter Stormare is.
Well, and I think certain actors sell. I think Peter Stormare sells it fine. Colin Farrell sells it really well. He's really good.
But he's
No,
not
he's
over
not
the
a
top.
character. He's not an over-the-top character actor. And,
Yeah.
I will say Peter Stormare is kind of the scene that he's in is like ripped right out of a Terry Gilliam movie, and in that regard, I think the scene feels misplaced in this
In this movie.
overly blown out movie, which I think they were trying to go for. When you're in society, it's all these like chrome blue, white, and now you're in the dirty like
Well,
villain
let's
area.
talk about that for a second, just for a second. The film stock that they used and the process they used. David, you know that, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up the quote, but there was so basically Spielberg works with the same DP all the time. His name is
That is director of photography.
yeah, his director of photography. Sorry,
Did you just like explain what that meant?
he did.
Do you know how many people don't know what that means and
That's
think
true.
it means something absolutely different?
Yeah.
What do they think it means, Larry?
Well, sometimes it can mean double penetration.
Oh, snap.
Stop. All right, so Giannis Kaminsky has done almost all of Spielberg's movies in this era, and basically he was like the house DP for Spielberg's film company. But anyways, so I have this quote from Spielberg.
Did he do Saving Private Ryan?
He did.
Okay.
He also did Schindler's List, and
No.
yeah, so
Not
um,
that movie Skindler's List.
please stop. Please stop.
Never stop, Anthony.
So Spielberg believed very much that this was his big whodunit murder mystery. It was the first time he'd done a movie that he considered noir. And so he said, "We decided to put the film through a process called bleach bypass, which essentially takes out all of the Technicolor from your face and makes your face much more pale. What it does is it takes those happy, delightfully rosy skin tones away from people who are naturally that way and washes everything out. Then we shot some of the scenes on 800 ASA film stock, which creates a kind of graininess that makes it feel like an old film noir."
But it doesn't. It makes me feel like I'm watching a soft focus ad from the early 90s.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It came out more like a perfume ad than it did a noir film.
100%. Larry,
Yeah.
you got it.
And yeah, so that was a huge problem with so let's talk about the plot and the differences. So the story of Minority Report, the film, is pretty close, comparatively to some adaptations, like, for example, like the, I don't know, Ender's Game that came out a couple of years ago.
Did not see it.
All right, so this is much more faithful in some regards to some tones. It takes a lot of liberties with the story, but I think we all agree that in order to flesh out a whole story for a movie or a novel, you're going to have to change some things, correct?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And Larry and I both agree that, at least the two of us agree, that the stakes with the whole storyline, the stakes in the movie are much better than the story. So the story
Right.
is...
I don't think I agree with that. I think that they're different, but I don't know if they're better. And...
But I don't know if better is the word, but greater is definitely.
There's more...
Oh, all right. I see
No,
what
what
you
he
mean.
means is there's more stakes.
There's more stakes, sure, but I think that being the subject of a unit that you're responsible for and are now the target of is really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's not to say that the story wasn't interesting, but so the plot of the movie, the difference is John Anderton is not the founder of Pre-Crime. He's just a regular cop. We see a lot more in the movie of the process of Pre-Crime, and I think that was a smart way to start off the story, showing another case and showing Anderton being good at his job and predicting a crime.
So you didn't want just one long take of a bunch of people sitting in chairs going, fucking bumblebee tuna.
So the way that the precogs work in this story and they have is that
They lay in a little salt bath pool.
they live in a salt bath pool.
And they're very attractive.
They have
They are.
Yeah, and they're not mutants. And they just randomly, and in the dumbest scene of the whole movie, which I cannot believe Spielberg did not cut out in the editing room, Agatha, one of the precogs, just randomly at the beginning says, "Murder." It is the corniest thing in the whole fucking movie. I could not stop laughing when I saw. Can't believe
None of us could stop laughing on that.
Right. So, and I should pull away the curtain here. We all watched the movie together before recording, and
I mean, it's just as hokey and dumb as their three names, which is just a little, you get it? It's a mystery movie.
And Arthur,
Dumb.
it is a tribute, a little homage to mystery writers. So,
Right, he was trying to display how they are making a noir film.
I rolled, my eyes rolled so far back, I could see my brain.
but I could actually see if you were naming. But see, the thing is,
But you can see how these are non-science fiction people making a science fiction movie where...
And then, they're not even sci-fi writers.
are you saying Spielberg's not a non-sci-fi guy? I'm going to call bullshit on that.
Well, did you see Ready Player One? Not saying that
No,
it's
I
really
haven't- I
sci-fi,
haven't
it's more
seen
fantasy, but...
I don't think
Spielberg's
he's
made-
necessarily a sci-fi guy.
He's made some of the best science fiction movies ever.
He's also made some of the worst.
Like what?
Like Close Encounters, E.T.
Close Encounters is no fire in the sky.
Hey now.
Shit.
Close Encounters is a fantastic movie.
I came here to talk real, y'all.
Okay. Close Encounters is a fantastic movie.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
AI is terrible.
It sure
I
is.
like AI.
I don't like E.T.
AI would have been a better movie if Stanley Kubrick had made it. I will admit that, but I like AI. Kubrick. So yeah,
There should be no aliens in Indiana Jones.
all right,
Yeah,
we're
we don't
getting-
talk about that, Larry.
Well,
So
why not?
next
We're talking
week on
about
the
Spielberg's great
Spielbergian
history with
podcast.
sci-fi.
Yeah, next week on the Bergcast, we're going to talk about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which I've managed to avoid seeing to this day, and I'm not going to watch it. Back to you, David.
All right, Bergheads. So the movie is different in the sense that Anderton, he's not the lead of Pre-Crime. Burgess is, who's Cito's character. There's an inventor of Pre-Crime who comes into the story later. And so the precogs, they sit in their bath salt and a ball comes out, and then they have to rush and still solve the crime. And I did like and think that it was a good aspect of the difference of the film that added more excitement and tension to it, that once they get the prediction ball, the card, if you will, of this.
It's like a little
prediction
lottery
ball.
ball. It's
It's
so
like a little
silly.
lottery ball. But once they get it, they have a short period of time between when that drops and the murder actually happens. They have a short period of time, and they have to solve the crime really quickly and
Yeah,
go and get it.
in the story, they have well over
Like a week.
2 days. Or
They have a week in one case.
Yeah.
Which
they have
is,
a lot of time to solve the crime.
you can put your feet up and think about it. And I think
Go to the break room for some coffee. But here's the interesting thing about
So-
the differences, though, between the story in the book is, the story in the movie is that in the book, you're kind of led to believe that when Anderton gets his slip in the crime he's about to commit, it's the first time they've had a murder in years. Whereas
Right.
in the film,
There's-
they're always rushing to smash through somebody's skylight
and the reason
Right, after
why
the clock
is
runs
because
down.
after the fact.
because in DC you wouldn't ever plan a murder because pre-crime will get you. But if you're in a crime of passion, right, and you're going to murder somebody, there's only a short period of time. So that's why there aren't a lot of murders, but that's why it actually makes story sense, right?
Right, and that was also
And I think that
one
is
of the big things
the
the
cool-
screenwriter talks about in one of his interviews.
Scott Frank.
Scott Frank talks about how he wanted to personalize this story instead of it being about about
whole
the
system.
military versus pre-crime. He wanted it to be more about the people involved, which is why Tom Cruise's character has a dead son and why the first murder we see is a crime of passion and stuff like that.
And there are aspects to that I don't think that's the problem with the movie. Like, those are things that I think could have worked and should have worked.
Well, it becomes a problem in the false finale, but
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a different, but I think that's a different problem. I don't think making it personal is necessarily the problem. I think that was actually a smart move by Scott Frank.
sure.
And that also adds to the stakes. It also makes it all like, seen. And the idea that Anderton has, in the story, he knows the guy whose name comes up. He knows who Leopold
No,
Kaplan-
he doesn't.
Doesn't?
He doesn't
Nope.
know who he is
Oh,
up until he's kidnapped, and he figures it out
figures it out
as
pretty
he's
quick.
standing there.
Okay,
that
that's
this is Leopold
Well,
Kaplan.
he's introduced to him.
Yeah,
so-
exactly. So
Right. Okay, so, and he doesn't know anything about the character in the movie either. It takes a little bit longer. The mystery is kind of dragged out a little bit more.
A little bit.
Yeah, a lot of it.
a little bit.
So the story of Minority Report, the movie, is definitely longer. It's more drawn out. You have more action set pieces, and the movie, the running time of the movie is 2 hours and 25 minutes. And there's a point, right?
Oh my god.
And the biggest problem that I have with the movie, and I know I looked at you guys as soon as it was over and said, I liked that movie a lot more 2 hours and 25 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Because my memory of seeing it in the theater was pretty good. And I think also I could forgive a little bit more of its sins when I didn't know that there was still a half an hour left, when that the mystery was still there for the first viewing.
It was fresh.
It was fresher, so I think I could hang with the 2 hours and 25 minutes a bit more. Although I know that even when I saw it in the theater in 2002, I thought it was too long.
Yeah.
And I think...
But isn't every Spielberg movie just a little too long?
Yes.
Sometimes, yeah. So here's the thing, is that there is a false ending where we get to the... Basically, we catch up with the murder, and we get to the point where the murder happens. There's a whole storyline where he kidnaps one of the precogs, and all that, and it could have very neatly ended with getting to the point of the murder and Anderton deciding not to commit the murder at the last minute. There's your climactic ending. Pre-crime gets basically is done, and there's the end of your movie. And however, this movie still has another half an hour left. Oh my god! And that half an hour comes down to basically Tom Cruise gets convicted, he gets put on ice, and then his wife figures out that he was innocent and that he was set up for the murder by
Max von Sydow.
Big surprise.
Sydow.
Sydow.
Yeah, so...
Which is odd because thematically they've been going the same way as the short story, but this second climax is antithetical to the short story.
And it takes away the power of the Minority Report.
Well, the Minority Report has nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah, so the Minority Report has no real purpose.
Well, it's like that thing when people point out, and I hate this because Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my favorite movies, but when people point out that if Indiana Jones hadn't been there, nothing would have changed. Right? Because the Nazis would have gotten the Ark, they would have opened it, and their faces would have melted. Right?
Yeah, the end result would have been, wow.
Yeah. Huh. Wow, I never thought of that.
Well,
yeah.
Everything's a lie.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
The end result would have been the same.
Next week on Burkheads.
That's we dissect Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's if they would have found it. Remember, because of him, they got to look in the right area.
Okay.
Where they were looking in the wrong area before.
That's true. They might not have found it without.
This
him.
was funnier before you debunked that.
Anyway.
Anyways, so
what they do in the movie is they introduce a different
plotline.
No, it's a different method of proving that.
They don't use the Minority Report. They use a different technique to figure out how things work.
It was the false memory.
It's called the precog echo.
The echo, yes, that's right.
Which is not in the short story.
No, and so there's an echo.
So they replace the Minority Report with this other thing.
So why not just call it Echo, based on a short story by Philip K. Dick?
Right.
Well, and here's the thing. Without that 25 minutes, I personally believe very firmly that if that movie ended right there, that it's actually an okay
but it still wouldn't
movie.
It still wouldn't be Minority Report.
Well, it would still be based on, like, he got to that point with
they would definitely have to do some other things prior to that.
You could fix a few things, and basically, if you ended at that point, you have an okay movie. You have a okay Spielberg, Philip K. Dick movie, but when you add that 25 minutes, you ruin it. And not only that, but you add that 25 minutes, you add the stupid Echo storyline that just adds a whole nother element of it. You have the very unsurprising twist of Max von Sydow being the villain.
Right.
And then you have the hokiest way possible that his wife breaks him out of hypersleep, basically, and brings him there to catch Sydow in the middle of a speech, which is kind
of reminiscent of the end of the short story where they're at the podium and they're making a declaration, and and Anderton kills Kaplan. But in this movie,
Kaplan kills himself.
Yeah, Burgess kills himself.
We're getting there, dude.
And it doesn't matter because that whole 25 minutes sucks. And that whole edition
you missed
is that whole edition of the 25 minutes and the false ending is the problem, in my opinion. It is the worst.
Well, there are
problem.
other problems.
I think it's one of the bigger problems,
Yeah.
but it's not the problem.
For
You-
me,
you have to
as somebody who kind of likes the movie, that's the problem.
But you have to admit this movie does go through a lot of talking and then action set piece and then just more useless talking and then action set piece and more useless talking. They explain things that don't mean anything.
Well, but
It's exposition that doesn't need to be there at all.
But see, I like a lot of the action pieces, and I do think that they're connected a bit to it. The last, I don't know. I mean,
Why did they break through the skylight?
After he'd already tackled the guy.
yeah, that is a problem. So, and
Why did he throw off his helmet before he ran inside?
so
just
you
doesn't
could
make any
see Tom
sense.
Cruise's face? Well, yeah, there are problems. Oh, okay, so look, the last thing I want to say is a huge difference between the story and the movie. And Scott Frank talks about this, and I have the quote here. So I thought to myself, how do you get behind someone who embraces a fascistic system? Why would someone ever believe that this is a good thing? Well, first, the situation in the world would have to be pretty dire. The murder rate would have to be out of control. More people would have to be dying from murder than natural causes, and there would have to be some kind of panic that forces us to embrace such an extreme loss of civil liberties. So that leads me to, this movie came out in 2002, so they were in production or through some point of making the movie when 9/11 happened. And when the movie came out, you have a country that's embroiled in the debate over the Patriot Act, which is an extreme loss of civil liberties.
In light of horrific circumstances.
Right. And you have this whole system where they were going to basically make it legal to spy on people in really intrusive ways that were not legal before this time. So Minority Report, the short story, and the movie both become, even though it's a story that originated in 1954, became much more important of a concept to explore in 2002 than really the movie ended up doing.
Well, and they also had to abandon the military versus police aspect due to the same thing, because this is a time of extreme patriotism.
Yeah, there's a lot of jingoism going on at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, yeah, the military storyline, which is...
You can't have the military be a villain
Yeah, it would not have...
in that time.
Yeah, not if you're Spielberg and Tom Cruise and you're two of the most powerful people in Hollywood. That probably wouldn't have looked good. But
Aww.
but I'll tell you, they...
Yet we did this real shit cinematography. But we don't want to offend the military. Okay.
But
How do you really feel, Anthony?
But the point,
Yeah.
but my point is it's really interesting that this movie really kind of addresses some of these civil liberty issues. And what Scott Frank was saying was one of the major reasons why he wanted to change the story is because he couldn't get behind the idea that Anderton would sacrifice himself for a system that was flawed or fascistic in his...
Inherently evil as he viewed it.
Yeah, so he changes Anderton completely to the guy who takes down the system. So you have your main character, instead of sacrificing himself in the short story...
In like, to preserve the system.
Right. So, I mean, how would Philip K. Dick feel, you think? I mean, I think Philip K. Dick would not be a huge fan of the Patriot Act to begin with.
Probably
Oh, no.
not, no.
Yeah, if he was alive at this time. So it's kind of confusing, like what's
Paranoid, drug-doing intellectual?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think he'd be
against
not
Yeah.
for it.
right, and so
Yet he had that weird phase where he was like kind of like pseudo-religious.
we're getting way ahead of the
Yeah.
DickHeads here. But my thinking is would Phil? I think as much as I can't really tell, Scott Frank's basically saying he doesn't. I don't think Scott Frank's pro Patriot Act, and I think he was trying to express that feeling with this film. So
Yeah.
I think, to a degree, that change in attitude is one that I think actually PKD probably would have been down for. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
in 1954, he wrote a story where the hero sacrifices everything to protect the system. I don't think PKD, if he was still alive in 2002.
But he didn't write it. He wasn't just protecting the system. He was protecting the system from the military.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. To a degree, yeah.
So it's different, but it still wouldn't, it wouldn't make sense in 2002, even if PKD were looking at it to say, oh yeah, it's fine to be anti-military at this time.
So, I didn't really talk about this ahead of time, but I guess one way that we should probably end all these movie podcasts is to talk about how would PKD feel about this movie? And I know what you guys are going to say right off the bat. You don't think... But keep in mind, a lot of people think that he died having only seen a rough cut of Blade Runner. And there are a lot of people that think because Blade Runner is antithetical to some of the points that Do Androids Dream Electric Sheep makes, that he would not have liked Blade Runner, but he was down for the movie Blade Runner. He expected some changes. And I think as a creator, overall, he probably wouldn't have been totally in love with this movie, but...
He would have hated all the advertisements.
Yeah.
Yeah, he probably would have hated that. I'm not a big fan of that, but that didn't ruin the movie for me. I know it really bugged you, Larry, but it didn't ruin the movie for me, personally. I think the point, and at that time, I think PKD would have been into the idea of it making a point about civil liberties. And if you think about it, it's a bit of a subversive thing that in 2002, 1 year after 9/11, that Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg made a movie that was completely about protecting civil liberties and like this kind of coded science fiction film about the loss of civil liberties. And I hadn't really thought about it there, but
No, I hadn't thought about that idea either.
And so in that sense, it's a flawed movie. It has terrible cinematography. It's 25 minutes too long. It has really corny scenes like murder and stuff like that. But I'm going to give it...
It parodies noir films.
Yeah,
Right.
it's straight up parodies rather than homages.
But in light of the time of which it was released and what it was trying to say, I still am going to give it 3 out of 5 stars.
3 out of 5 precogs.
I'll give it 2 precogs out of 5 precogs.
I'm with Anthony on that one.
Yes.
Yeah. And look, 3 was
And
hard.
that's being kind.
Yeah.
I would say that's pretty generous.
I think I'm being generous with the 3, but the reason why I is because of the message and the time that when it came out. Because you cannot divorce a movie from when it was. I think you can talk about it then and you can talk about it now, but especially with big Hollywood movies, like I do think when it came out. And
Well, we didn't get into like complaining about the CG or anything like that. So
CG was,
we've given it some allowances as it goes.
Yeah, the CG was not great. Some things were better than others. I think the spider drones worked. I think the way that the CG enhanced the Fincher style, like
What about
camera roaming,
eyeball hobo?
that
drug
was
dealer?
bad.
That was goofy.
That was really
pretty
bad.
goofy.
Yeah. And I think there was pluses and minuses to all those things, and they definitely shouldn't have used the bleach out process. But, hey, Spielberg was trying to do something different and something new, and so give him a little bit of credit for trying.
For the attempt.
And if you noticed, he's never used the bleach out process ever again.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they
Rightly
used it
so.
in Saving Private Ryan.
Never saw it.
Well, if they
On
did...
but it was a totally different scene that they were doing.
was that a flashback? Or
No, it was the Normandy Beach. They washed
right.
that scene out entirely to make it more realistic.
Again, next week on
And
Bergheads.
Yeah. On the Berg cast.
I don't know, maybe...
I'm not starting a Steven Spielberg
That came out prior to this movie, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan's great. Yeah, that's a 90s movie.
Wait.
But somehow this movie, whereas that scene, the March on Normandy Beach, whatever you call it, the D-Day thing. I hate
It's
to
called
sound,
D-Day, Larry.
I hate to make it. Yeah, I'm
know
not trying
your
to be disrespectful.
fucking history.
That's that really worked because it was totally washed out. Whereas
Right.
this movie is washed out in the faces, like he says, but the backgrounds are really vibrant and
1998.
oversaturated,
Yeah,
which is a big problem Anthony had with it
Oh yeah, I
when we
hated,
were watching the movie.
Oh god, I couldn't stand it. Everything's oversaturated. Everything's like brightly lit. It looks like spilled milk. Oh god.
Right? And the fog effects and
Yeah.
well, just Saving Private Ryan is just a way better movie. Let's
Well,
be
yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just more in the zone. And I think part of one of the reasons why Spielberg was not kind of at the top of his game in this movie is because he was kind of trying things he'd never tried before. And, you know, so I can't totally fault him for that. You know, like...
yeah, you totally can. He's a professional filmmaker.
I will give him credit.
You can't fault him.
I'll give him credit.
You
Shut
can
up.
give him credit for
Shut
trying.
the fuck up. Let me talk. Go ahead, Larry.
No, go ahead.
No, please.
No, I want to listen to you for a change.
I'll give him
sorry.
credit. I'll give him.
Sorry, I'm gonna be playing Fruit Ninja while you talk. So.
Blah blah.
Now
I'll give
we're definitely
him.
boring people.
I'll give him credit for trying something new, but that doesn't mean I have to like it, and that doesn't mean it was good.
Yeah. All right. So let's
I
wrap
think
this
that's
up. Minority Report is not.
Read the story. Don't watch the movie.
Yeah, definitely read the story if you haven't. And I would say next time we're gonna have a lot more fun when we do our next movie because we're gonna do.
Total Recall.
Come on, get your ass to Mars.
It's gonna be awesome. So stoked.
Get your ass to Mars. Arnold does that a ton in that movie.
And we may or may not have a special guest on for that episode.
That's true.
We're working
A
on
mystery guest.
We're working on a special dickhead, like
Yep.
part-timer.
But in the meantime,
The World Jones Made. So see you next time on DickHeads.
Murder.
and remember to keep it paranoid.
Paranoid.
Stay paranoid.
Yeah, that's what it is. Stay paranoid, everyone.